So I do have music on in the background if you're hearing like weird noise under or over my talking. I needed some music on this morning because it is just a music kind of morning. Anyway, you know. And it's Jefferson Airplane. I love me some Jefferson Airplane. So first of all, just to say, if you have dry to very dry skin and you have a issue with dry patches on your face, I would stay away from this foundation because I know I have normal to dry skin, so when I do get those dry patches on my face, I can't wear this because it clings to those and makes them very obvious. But if you have, I would say, dry to normal or any kind of combination oily skin, this would be great for you because on me, I know it lasts at least 4 to 6 hours. It stays almost perfect in that 4 to 6 hour range. So then, I'm not sure how it would last on oily skin, but I know some of my friends have used this and they love it for their oily skin because it does really help to keep them matte. Now, saying all of that, even though I have dry skin and I know like the oils in my skin are not going to break up this foundation, I feel like if I have to have it on for more than 4 hours and I'm not using a primer, after those 4 hours it is going to break up. So I feel like you definitely want to use a primer with this, and you want to use something that is going to be kind of pore minimizing, pore filling, like the Benefit Professional or the L'Oreal Miracle Blur. And if you're more on a budget, there is the Maybelline Baby Skin, which I feel like is just as good as the Miracle Blur. But you want to use something that is going to help minimize your pores, because I feel like if you have large pores or any problem areas with pores, this will just kind of make that a little more noticeable and obvious. But the primer that I have been using is the MAC Prep and Prime Skin Smoother Base, and this is like just a balm. It's like the Mally one. I know Mally makes one. But what I do with this is I just take and rub my finger in it and I press it into my pores, because you really want to fill that area, obviously. And I do take this all over my face as well, but you really want to be careful with this so you're not over applying it. You really just need the smallest amount of products like this. So I just kind of start where I have like either weird texture issues or issues with pores, which is around the center of my face. And then I work out from there, always pressing in, because when you press it into your skin, it is just going to make your makeup last longer. And please ignore my butchered finger. I'm trying to let it breathe and just keep the bandage off of it right now, but just ignore it. So yeah, I'm just pressing it over areas where I have like blemishes or scarring, or just to smooth down those areas, because I feel like this just shows off any kind of weird texture or pores. So to start applying the foundation, now that we're like 5 minutes in and I still haven't done anything, I just take some on my finger and I start to kind of just dot it on my face. I feel like this is the best way to do this, then you don't end up with too much, because too much, even though it says it's not going to cake up on you, doing too much of this, it's going to cake up on you. It is just inevitable. And my color is 100 Ivory. It's a little bit dark, but the other shade was a little bit too light. And I feel like most of these shades are quite warm toned as well. Like they're very golden. They're not very yellowy, but they're very like golden undertone. So I'm just going to apply this to the one half of my face so you can see the difference. And what I do is I just start pushing my brush. Oh, and I'm using the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush, which is more of a squared off kind of foundation brush. And I feel like this brush really just pushes in the product and really buffs it in and really just makes it look like skin, which is kind of hard to do with a matte foundation. And I feel like when you apply this with a denser brush, you get better coverage and better application. I do not like applying this with the Beauty Blender. I do not think that application method works very well with this foundation. But I'm pushing it into my skin because when you push products in to the skin, they last longer. So as you can see, this side of my face is completely covered, and this is only one layer of this foundation. So looking at this side of my face, you can see that pretty much all blemishes and scarring is covered, and my skin tone is even out, and then you compare it to this side of my face, and I do have some redness and scarring on this side of my face. I only do one layer of this foundation. I do not do two. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side of my face while I'm talking. So I do not do 2 layers of this foundation because I feel if you do 2 layers of this foundation, you are going to end up with far too much on your face, and that is when it starts to look cakey, is when you do 2 layers. So 1 layer of this foundation is obviously plenty. If you have oily skin, you might be able to get away with 2 layers, but if you have normal to dry skin like I do, 1 layer is going to be more than enough coverage for you. So I also thought I would throw in how I do my concealer when I do this foundation, because I do my concealer differently when I wear this foundation, because I feel like if I did my normal routine with my prolonged wear and highlight my whole face like the triangle Kim K kind of thing, that gets far too heavy very quickly, and it just does not look nice. So what I do is I use 2 different shades of the MAC Studio Finish Concealer, which is kind of a heavier concealer, but if you use it very lightly, it gives a very nice finish to the skin. So first I start with my lightest shade, which is NC15, and I take my Real Techniques domed shadow brush and just very lightly tap it in the product, and then I run the NC15 around the inner portion of my eye, so around the tear duct, and up a little bit just to highlight that area, and then I start pulling it down onto my cheekbone a little bit. And I just go back and get a little bit more product as needed. And then I just start to blend it around my eye area. Just very lightly, just to kind of lighten that area up. And then I will take a little bit on my ring finger and just really pat it right under my eye, just to make sure that whole area is concealed. So, and you can completely tell a difference that this side is a little bit lighter and a little bit more awake looking. And I will blend it down a little bit just on the top of the cheekbone, just to really make sure that area is light and still kind of highlighted, but not as heavy. And you can see that this side looks a little bit more dimensional and this side looks a little bit more flat. So I did do the smallest bit of highlighting with my NC15 shade of the Studio Finish, just very lightly down the bridge of my nose, on the top of my Cupid's bow, and a little bit on my chin and a little bit of the center of my forehead, just to kind of bring areas of my face forward so it doesn't look so flat, because with a matte foundation you can tend to look very flat. And then I go in with NC20 after I've done all that on the same brush, still very lightly, and I just go around my nose because I tend to have really stubborn redness around the edges of my nose. And I just feather that out onto the rest of the face. Or not the rest of the face, but the area around right there. So I just feather it out super lightly. And then what I do is I look at the rest of my face and see if there are any areas where I have really like bad scarring or redness coming through. And I will also go in with a little bit of that NC15 shade. So then I go back in with that NC15 shade. And like right here, this is always the most stubborn scarring I have. I tend to get a lot of blemishes in this area on the same spot. Imagine that. So right here, I will just do a little bit of touching up with that concealer, and I'm just pushing that over and then kind of blending a little bit around the edge. And I do go a little bit around my mouth because I tend to not apply foundation really close to my mouth for some reason. So I just blend that around. And I use very minimal concealer with this foundation because I don't need to use the concealer because it covers so well when I use the Expert Face Brush. I have found that anything else I use tends to not make this as high of a coverage of foundation. So then I do set this. I am paranoid to no end about not setting my face. And I set my under eyes like normal with my Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Powder. And I just push that just under my eyes. I don't bring this down anywhere else. I just push this under my eyes. Just like that. Just in my eye area, because you really do not need to powder this foundation, but like I said, I'm paranoid. Even though I don't have oily skin, I always set my foundation just to be safe. So once I've got my under eyes set, which is really the biggest issue with me with this, because I find that these Studio Finish concealers do crease on me under my eyes if I don't set them. So once I am done with that, I go in with a loose powder. This is just the Coty Airspun powder. And I use a stipple style duo fiber brush. This one is from Real Techniques, as are all of my other brushes. And I tap off any excess, and I just lightly kind of dust that over my face. I'm not dipping back into the powder except to go to the other side of my face. So I am using very little all across my face. So I'm not really necessarily setting my face, I am just finishing my face. I'm using this more of as a finishing powder than a setting powder, because you really do not need to powder this foundation into place. It will stay. So I did go ahead and finish my face, and I finished my face like normal. I used my powder contour, powder highlight, powder blush. I didn't use any cream products. I think just sticking with what you use all the time is fine. If you like to use cream products, go ahead. I don't think it will mess with this foundation too much. I do have to use more of a pink toned blush. If you've watched my review on this, if I don't use a pink toned blush and it's got any kind of brown coloring in it, it turns a funny color by the end of the day. But regardless, I love this foundation. I think it's great for every day, not to mention it's only $5. But anyway, that finishes up this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.